Okay, welcome everybody back to our council meeting here on Monday, September 8th. I am going to start off to the afternoon session of today's meeting with a territorial acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, the land on which we are broadcasting from today, is the land traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Chinantan people. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. And I wanted to take a moment to just sort of reflect on the first time I ever heard the Indigenous territorial acknowledgement for me was when my youngest attended Vista Hills Public School, and it was the grand opening of the public school. And that was the first time just over a decade ago, I guess, that I had ever heard a territorial acknowledgement. I had never heard it before, and I'm sure for many of the folks, the parents and children in the room, it was the first time that they had heard it as well, too. And I know that a lot of us that are in this room here today have heard these acknowledgements many, many times before, and sometimes it can sort of feel like a thing we just say at the start of the meeting. And of course, I'm guilty of that at times as well, too. But today, in delivering today's territorial acknowledgement, which is rare for a councillor, I'm just going to take a moment to remind myself of how I felt and how I thought and how I reflected on that first day that I ever heard a territorial acknowledgement. And so whether this is your first or 100th time that you've heard this, I would encourage all of us to just take a moment to reflect on today's acknowledgement as though they were hearing it for the first time and what it meant to them in that first time. And I have a moment of reflection as well. At the beginning of this council meeting, we pause to think about the needs of our community. May we show wisdom and compassion in all our decisions. And I will look to council again for any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Councillor Freeman.
Through you, Chair Bodley, I'm declaring a conflict on item 13B, Official Plan Amendment 52, Zoning Bylaw Amendment Z2403 for 177 to 179 Albert Street with regard to my place of employment.
Excellent, thank you. That's at the start of our 6:30 meeting, so we have that noted for then. And moving on, we've got 4 minutes to be approved. So I look to council for an approval of minutes, moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Freeman. All those in favor? That is almost unanimous. Thank you. And moving on, we have delegations. And we've got a delegation this afternoon from Sustainable Waterloo Region. We have Tova Davidson, the Executive Director of Sustainable Waterloo Region, who is here to share some information with council today. Welcome, Tova.
Hello, good afternoon. So nice to be here. Nice to see you all today. I love these presentations, so I appreciate you giving me some time to talk to you. I'm just going to share updates on everything that SWR worked on in 2024. Feels like a long time ago. And actually, I'm going to share also some things we're working on in 2025. This slide that we do every year is the one that I hope people pay most attention to, and it is in that year-end report that I gave to you today. It is the cumulative impact of our work in the year 2024. And there's lots and lots of statistics here, and we as a region love to go by the numbers, so I encourage you to take a look at those and share the impacts. But even more, we've celebrated our 15th year of SWR in 2024. And we sort of stopped and reflected on what was the impact of the organization over those 15 years. We've served more than 180 organizations in what is now called our Impact Network program. We've planted more than 3,000 trees in 36 sites. We've had lots and lots of people participate in what's called a carbon cleanse, which is an inter-member challenge. But the number at the top right is the one that I'm most proud of. Over those 15 years, we've had over 750,000 hours of volunteer time donated to this cause. And SWR, people often think, is a really big organization. In fact, we're a core team of between 8 and 9, depending on what's going on. We're just a small group, but we have a really strong and robust team. And it's through those volunteers and those hours that they give that we've been able to do all the work that we have. The SWR staff team, however, decided we wanted to do something to say thank you to this community for all of the support over the past 15 years. So we did 15 acts of give back to the community. And we volunteered our time to do things like deliver food for House of Friendship, repaint other nonprofit spaces, plant gardens, do clothing drives, et cetera, et cetera. It was really fun and a great way to give back because we couldn't do it without the community together. I'll get into some of the actions of the year of what happened. So the Evolve One building is something that you are all very well aware of. If you've never been in the Evolve One building, I encourage you to see it. It was developed and is owned and managed by the Core Group, and it's located in the R&T Park, of which some of the great people are here today. And they were partners in the development of this, and SWR had this as part of our vision in our most recent strategic plan. Actually, that was 2013, not most recent, in 2013. And we're really lucky that the Core Group allows us to actually report on how this building is doing. For those who don't know, Evolve One is Canada's very first net positive energy multi-tenant office building. It is carbon neutral, and the cost to develop it was only between 5% and 8% more expensive than an average Class A office space, proving that this is actually a very good business case. The Cora Group boldly allows us also to share the numbers and how the building is doing. Lots of buildings around the country and around the world claim to be high-performance buildings, but Evolve One does publish these numbers through us. The building last year generated 108% of the energy used on site. So of the energy we needed, we generated more than we needed, and that additional 8% goes into the grid to help clean the grid for the whole province. Our Impact Network program, which is the thing that people know us most for. If you hear someone say they're a member of SWR, they probably mean the Impact Network. We support ongoing about 70 organizations. We run events, and we've got lots and lots of people that come to those events to learn more about how to run a good, sustainable business that is resilient and prosperous. Among those members, of which the City of Waterloo is one of them, we have a commitment for more than 60,000 tons to be reduced, but actually cumulatively we've reduced almost 83,000 tons. And this is all by businesses and organizations that are thriving and prospering, showing that the movement towards a low carbon future is actually a movement towards prosperity and resiliency. Some people can't understand what exactly that means. 83,000 tons, what does that mean? It's about 18,500 cars off the road. So that gives you sort of a way of understanding what that means. We also, in 2024, launched a partnership with Explore Waterloo Region, of which the City of Waterloo is also a part. And this is actually to try to drive a change within the events, conferences, tourism, and sporting sector in our community, and to attract more events to this region. So we work with a variety of facilities as well as whole events to measure and help to reduce the impact of those events. And what we're finding is it's actually driving planners to choose Waterloo Region more often, because this is something we aren't seeing anywhere else in Canada as a collaborative movement. The Climate Action Program is where we work on and report the whole community's carbon footprint, including the City of Waterloo, and we have great representation with Anna, who is here on your team at that table. And we have a new campaign for the Climate Action Program called With You We Can, knowing that this is actually a movement that isn't housed only in the responsibility of a municipality, but every single resident, every single business, every trip we take, everything we do. And so we're working to bring everybody in this community together with a positive attitude towards reaching our community targets. Last year, we brought the 2022 inventory to the community, and we saw that we have reduced our carbon footprint 12% from our 2010 baseline year, which is great, but not enough. We are not on track to reach our 2030 goals of a 50% reduction, nor the long-term goals of an 80% reduction by 2050. We did, however, launch a bigger, wider tent to make this collaborative more inclusive. So we now have a community leadership table, which includes Chamber of Commerce, includes post-secondary and public education, it includes public health, it includes Indigenous representation, it includes BIAs, on and on and on, with the idea that it is a community movement and for us to understand what are the needs of the community and the opportunities. We also widened the tent in our steering committee, where we have the expertise expertise from a number of community experts in how do we implement the actions that are listed in the Transform WR strategy. I'd also encourage you to watch for an event coming up in September. We are running a climate fest for the whole region, so take a look on the website for that. Our microforest program is something that people love, and they've got a great understanding because trees are an accessible way to get into the sustainability world. In 2024, we planted 16 forests, and we actually engaged with a lot of students in these. We had more than 1,800 students come out, and some of them planting their very first thing ever. It's pretty cool to see it happen. We had one kindy group surround an existing anchor tree and yell, "Trees!" as they took a picture. Really cute. We also ran a program and helped design the curriculum to reskill people to work in the clean tech industry. And this is to encourage us to move our economy towards integration of clean tech, both in the technical side, but in this case, in the business side. How do you do project management? How do you do sales, et cetera, in clean tech? We also took on a program that was started by the Circular Innovation Council, and it has now grown into Waterloo Region, where we are trying to fill the gap that is not filled by regional pickup, and for organizations or locations that wouldn't have the capacity to have their own organics collection. So this program now operates in Waterloo Region as well as in Guelph and Wellington, and we help to bring local food to those who need it through food rescue. Then we take that organics and we take it to an anaerobic digester to create renewable natural gas from it, and then the rest goes into compost for farmers' fields. And as I said, it's to reach small and medium enterprises and multi-unit residential who would not have service from the municipality, from the region, as well as who wouldn't be large enough to have to manage their own organics collection. We also launched something that we tongue-in-cheek called the Eco Magic Super Tool, because we couldn't come up with a very meaningful name, so we thought fun was better. It's an AI tool available to everyone, including the staff at the City of Waterloo, to be able to say, this is our building, this is our footprint, we're trying to reduce our carbon footprint or save energy, here are the things we've done, here's our energy use, the greenhouse gases, which is a calculation we do with you, and the AI tool will actually tell you what it is you should be doing. Then you can ask it for a return on investment, an upfront capital requirement. You can ask it to create the slides, to sell it to your CFO. You can actually even prioritize actions and how do you implement it. SWR this year, so I'm getting into the current year, has now launched a new program called Frameworks. This is actually a program that came out of our learning through the Evolve One project. We know that the building and the development industry has to move towards net zero buildings faster because code is projected to be net zero by 2030. And so the Frameworks program is designed to be a support for this sector to curate and make it more accessible to learn and evolve within their own understanding of how do they change their business and their practices towards sustainable buildings. I'll wrap it up there just with a quote that I think is really beautiful and a really important one. It harkens back to those volunteers over the last 15 years about the impact that people can make together. And thank you to this council and to this community for all the support. We couldn't have done it without you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Tova. It's always a pleasure to hear you come to council and delegate to us and to hear what's going on with Sustainable Waterloo Region, which is an organization that the city has supported for many years and does a lot of excellent work in the community. I will look to council to see if there are any questions of Tova. Mayor McCabe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thanks, Tova. Because I'm also a regional councillor, I get the benefit of getting to hear this twice. So thanks very much for sharing this information at multiple municipalities. I'm curious about the organics piece, the organics collection piece. And are you working with our Uptown BIA and the region of Waterloo? Because you know, there's waste management changes coming, but there's also a lot of talk and interest and, you know, thinking about like, how do we divert, particularly because there's so many excellent restaurants in Uptown, like how do they capture their food waste in a program like this? So I'm just wondering, are you collaborating or what's happening on that front?
Yeah, through the chair, we have had conversations, and I actually last week had a conversation with the BIA because the region is looking to provide that service in all of the BIAs across the region. There's been some reticence to adopt this program as a gap, because then they learn to do it one way and then they need to shift and make the change. So there hasn't been as much pickup in the BIAs. There are other locations. We've worked with the school board, have done some schools as pilots, that sort of thing. But because of that shift coming from the region, it hasn't been as much. The one thing we have seen, however, is organizations that were already doing their own organics collection have a number of them have shifted to us, because we buy more than 100 pickups a week, and so we get a better rate, because when you buy that many, you can negotiate.
Okay, thanks. That's really great to know. And I appreciate the information. And you always share it in such a positive way, which I appreciate. But I think the underlying thing, and as I said it when you brought it to the region as well, is we are missing our targets. We are going to miss our targets. That's not about you and the work that you're doing and the volunteers are doing. Like, your team is doing a tremendous amount of work for 15 years. But there's just more that we need to do, and we need to continue, I think, to talk about it and to, support the work that you're doing, because we know that this is a continuing problem. Like, look at the summer we just had, the wildfires that continue to, ravage multiple areas of Canada. This is important work that really needs, if anything, to be increased, because we are going to miss our targets unless more businesses really begin, I think, to work with an organization like SWR. Like, you make it relatively easy to figure out how they can reduce their carbon and probably save some significant energy dollars in the process. So thank you for the work you do, and I just, not to end on a downer note, but I think that's important to underline, is that we are going to miss our targets unless more and more of our business community get involved with your program. But thanks for the work you do.
Thanks.
Thank you for that, Mayor. Councillor Wright?
Thank you so much, through you, Chair. Tova, congratulations. 15 years is no small accomplishment, and it shows that you have so much community support behind you, so congratulations on that. I have a quick follow-up question on the Evolve 1 building, and then I want to ask you a question more about what you see coming down the pipeline. So last year, I know that it was difficult for Evolve 1 to get to the net zero target because of smoke days. And we had some considerable smoke days this summer, and yet you're at 108. Do you know what happened there, whether they tweaked or did some performance tweaking there to get that back on track?
So through the chair, the number 108 was from 2024. So we don't have the 25 number yet. So stay tuned. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it might still go through a little slump for 2025. Okay.
It might.
Okay, that's interesting to know, but also could be, maybe they fine-tune things a little bit. My follow-up has to do with just riffing a little bit on what Mayor McCabe was saying. There are a lot of mixed messages coming right now from our federal government in terms of targets and pathways, and that creates a lot of uncertainty, especially in the regulatory regimes, both at the federal government and the provincial government. Considering that sustainability measures can really help create that triple bottom line and reduce operations costs, and because there's so much opportunity at the local level, what do you see as being windows of opportunity here locally?
Through the chair, big question. So I think there's lots of opportunities for us to become more aware of the ability to do this. When I talk about the Evolve 1 building or do I do a lot of public speaking, and I share that there are businesses that have gone carbon neutral and saved $1 million doing it in our region, that the Evolve 1 building wasn't actually that much more expensive. And even when the new business park in Waterloo was being planned and there was a engineer's projection for how much more expensive these buildings would be, I got a call from your economic development team saying, really? It's as little as that? And I said, yeah, it actually is as little as that. So I think a lot of the work to do is making people understand the imperative of it, the possibilities of it, and the co-benefits of this kind of work. There is an ongoing and persistent perception that sustainability work is very expensive, that transitions are very expensive, whether it's in your home or in your business or at a community scale. And there is often an upfront capital investment. There's an opportunity for bodies like this to make bold decisions that are tough to make sometimes, but they actually have long-term, really strong benefit to community. So I think having the data is going to be a piece of it. We've seen some communities have a lot of data on the buildings in their existing stock, and so I think there's ways we can move toward it. But I think a lot of it is getting people to understand that this actually isn't something that's going to be harmful. It's actually going to be better. Homes that are net zero are cleaner and quieter and more comfortable and cheaper to run. Same thing with businesses.
That's great, thank you. Any other questions from council? Councilor Rowe?
No question, actually, through you, Chair, but just a comment, Tova. I always appreciate when you come and you share all of your successes, and you're such a champion that it's inspiring. And I know that we have a lot of work to do, but thank you for all that you contribute and inspire the rest of us to do more.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Tova. Really appreciate you coming in again here this afternoon. And as you can see, you've got a lot of support at the council horseshoe here. And look forward to see you at our next sustainability meeting, I think, this week.
I think so.
Yeah,
See you then.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We have one item on consent motion. This is fireworks bylaw amendment. Somebody need to have that pulled from consent? No, I look for somebody to move that. Councilor Wright and Councilor Freeman seconding. All those in favor? That is unanimous. And we will move on to staff reports. And the first staff report we have is the Housing Accelerator Fund Sugarbush South Corridor Expansion Initiative, Draft OPA, ZBLA, and Urban Design Guidelines. And we have a presentation from Richard Kelly Roots. Welcome.
Good afternoon, members of council, my colleagues, and members of the public. I'm actually not Richard. I'm Brenna McKinnon. I just wanted to introduce myself to you, council, as I'm relatively new to the city of Waterloo, not new to the planning world or to the region itself. And this is my first project with the city. I've been discussing this with Councillor Rowe since my time here. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our consulting team, Richard, who is a member of that team, to provide the information to you. I know the package was significant in your council, the council information package. And Richard will go through, give you a high-level overview, and I will be back for any questions and comments after the presentation. So thank you.
Thanks, Brenna, and good afternoon, members of council. My name is Richard Kelly Ritz. I'm a planning consultant with GSP Group. Also in attendance with me is my colleague Kristen Barrisdale, second row here. We've been working with the city of Waterloo over the past several months on the Sugarbush Land Use Plan. And for my portion of the presentation this afternoon, I'll give an overview of the Sugarbush South neighborhood, its existing policy context in the official plan, go into some detail about the draft Sugarbush Land Use Plan, and go over public engagements and next steps for the project. The Sugarbush South neighborhood is well located centrally in the city of Waterloo. It's located just north of the Northdale neighborhood and is proximate to two major transit station or LRT station areas, to the south and to the northwest. The study area boundary is bounded by Columbia Street West to the south, Albert Street to the west, Smallwood Drive to the north, and High Street to the east. In terms of the existing neighborhood, it's a fairly typical 1960s era residential subdivision consisting primarily of low-rise residential single detached dwellings. In the neighborhood, there are also some pockets of medium-rise apartments, generally 3 to 4 stories in height, particularly along Columbia Street West, Cardell Crescent, and other ones along High Street and Austin Drive. St. David's Secondary School is located outside of the study area boundary, but just north of the neighborhood. The neighborhood is also known for its tree canopy coverage on city streets and also on private yards in the rear. From an existing policy context, most of the neighborhood, particularly the interior, is designated low-rise residential in the city's official plan. The northwest portion of the neighborhood is located within a major transit station area corridor, and Columbia Street West, on the south edge of the neighborhood, is also within a minor corridor, which was recently added as such by council at the stage 1 of the city's official plan review at the end of last year. Minor corridors are areas in the city where additional intensification is planned to be directed to. So moving into the draft Sugarbush land use plan, I'll go over some key directions here. The overall objective of the plan is to enable missing middle housing types in the neighborhood, and what we mean by this is those types of housing between low-rise single detached dwellings and high-rise apartments, so it could include townhouses and apartments at 4 to 8 stories in height. I'll go over some more specific highlights of the plan in the following slides. One of the key directions of the land use plan is to redesignate the entirety of the neighborhood to medium-rise residential, which will enable the types of missing middle housing forms that are planned for Sugarbush South. Another key direction is to expand the minor corridor to Albert Street in Sugarbush South, which will connect the existing minor corridors that apply to the northwest of the neighborhood in the major transit station area to the other minor corridor along Columbia Street West. This minor corridor expansion will frame the periphery of the neighborhood where the highest levels of building height will be directed to in Sugarbush South. Moving into proposed building heights and densities within the neighborhood, as noted, the highest levels of heights are proposed along the minor corridors in the neighborhood. Here, maximum building heights of 8 stories are proposed, alongside a density of 450 bedrooms per hectare as a maximum. Individual applications may go up to 600 bedrooms per hectare through a zone change, and mixed use will also be facilitated along the minor corridors, particularly on the ground floors. In the interior of the neighborhood, a maximum building height of 6 stories is proposed that will serve as a transition from higher heights along the minor corridors to further low-rise neighborhoods to the north and east of Sugarbush South. Here, a maximum density of 450 bedrooms per hectare will also apply, along with the option for individual applications to go up to 600 through their own zone change application. Example typologies are shown on the 2 images on the screen, ranging from townhouses to 4 to 6 story apartment buildings. Within the neighborhood, there is a particular concentration of low or medium density rental apartments, as shown on a couple examples on the right side of the screen. This area is located around High Street, Holly Street, and Austin Drive. These lots contain existing rental housing, and however, their lot size make them conducive to future potential development. That being said, if development occurs here, it is important to take into account the possibility that redevelopment could impact existing tenants. The draft land use plan proposes to maintain existing building height permissions of 6 stories for these lands, which have existed for approximately 20 years in this pocket of the neighborhood. When the city passes a rental replacement bylaw in the future, which would protect some existing tenants when redevelopment occurs, at that time building height could be increased up to 8 stories. Moving along towards street frontages, there are 2 types of street frontages proposed in the neighborhood. Convertible frontages will apply along Columbia Street and Albert Street, which will enable some ground floor mixed uses or the potential for such at a future time. The interior of the neighborhood will be applied with the neighborhood frontage regulations, which will ensure that ground floor residential uses face and activate the street edge. As the neighborhood builds out, it will be important to take into account amenities for current and future residents. One key direction from the draft land use plan is that potential pedestrian corridors or walkways have been identified as shown on the green dashed lines throughout the neighborhood. This will improve pedestrian connectivity within the neighborhood and from the neighborhood to exterior destinations. Another key direction is the identification of a couple parquet locations shown on green circles on the draft plan, which will allow for similar potential parquets as has occurred in the Northdale neighborhood. With respect to parking rates, these are subject to ongoing study with Paradigm Transportation Solutions, who have been retained to undergo this further study. For the time being, a parking rate of 1.1 parking spaces per residential unit is proposed to apply in the neighborhood. In terms of the implementation of the draft land use plan, there are 3 key mechanisms. The first is an official plan amendment, the second is a zoning bylaw amendment, and the third is urban design guidelines. The official plan amendment will apply the medium-rise residential designation to the neighborhood, provide direction for future development applications which may seek higher densities, and also creates a new area-specific policy for the neighborhood. The zoning bylaw amendment proposes to apply the two new zones to the Sugarbush neighborhood to implement the 6- and 8-story building heights as shown in the map in the bottom right side of the screen. The zoning bylaw will also include other regulations related to street frontages, enabling mixed-use development, and applying holding provisions, including matters related to protecting existing rental housing. The urban design guidelines for Sugarbush South will complement the land use plan and provide design direction to future development, including on matters related to site layout, building design, and the public realm. This document contains significant graphics and will be a helpful visual guide to developers, city staff, and the public as the neighborhood builds out. Moving forward for next steps for the project, there are 2 public engagement sessions planned in early October. The first will be an in-person engagement session at the Waterloo Recreational Complex, and the second will be held virtually via Zoom. There is also a project webpage on Engage for the project, and contact information for Brenna is shown on the screen. Myself and city staff are available for any further questions or comments. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Richard. Appreciate that. I will look to council to see if there are any questions. I know Councilor Rowe has some, but if anyone, do you want to go first, Councilor Rowe, or do you want to? Okay, we'll let Councilor Rowe go. I'll swing back to you if you're nice. Councilor Rowe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you so much for the presentation and for all of the hard work that you and staff are doing on this project. I know it's been quite intense, and I certainly have appreciated the conversations and the information that I've received over these past few months. I am very pleased to see the holding provision in the High Street area because the affordable housing stock is has been of concern, so that is reassuring. Can you just, though, explain to me just a little bit more with the holding provision? Is the assumption that those apartment buildings that are there now may not then be sold? Like, could they be built up to 6? Like, I forget what the parameters are around that in affordable housing in terms of removing stock. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I will clarify if need be.
Through the chair, I can expand a little bit upon that, and you can let us know if any further clarification is needed. So the current land use permissions in that area allow for 6 stories in height, so that's going to be maintained going forward. And when the city passes a rental replacement bylaw, that's where that opportunity for up to 8 stories could be unlocked, so to speak. And what the rental replacement bylaw will do when one of those sites is redeveloped is that if an existing building has 6 or more residential units, that it would provide some protection for those tenants to make sure that their unit is protected post-development, and typically also that there's some accommodation for them during construction.
Great, thank you. And so I think what I'm looking for, is there any protection for them under 8 stories then? Like, so with the 6 stories, is there protection at this time?
Through the chair, without the rental replacement bylaw in place at this point in time, I would have to say no. I look to Adam or Tanya or Horace saying no, not at this point in time. But once the regulation does, or once the bylaw comes into force and effect, it's those buildings with 6 units or more will need to get essentially a permit through the bylaw itself to demolish those buildings and redevelop the site.
Okay, so that's a priority for me anyway. Okay, thank you. And the second thing is I'm really excited to see the parkettes because we've certainly had conversations about parks with the Sugarbush neighborhood. And I just wanted to confirm that the sites are flexible, so they may not be exactly where they are seen on the map. So that just depends on development. Like, will we be looking at how the neighborhood develops and then decide parkettes?
Through you, Chair, that's correct. So as the redevelopment occurs, depending on the lot size and the lot widths and other factors that come into play, it's a conceptual diagram to show the locations of those parkettes, which will be secured later through the development approval process.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Councilor Wright?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I just want to add on to a few of the things that Mary Lou asked about. So one is just what measures we have to ensure that the park spaces are very high quality. Right now in that neighborhood, not only is passive green space just people's backyards, but there's very little in terms of amenities that would suit children. For instance, there's a basketball court in a church parking lot that is really highly used, and it's not part of this neighborhood plan, even though it's directly adjacent. So whatever happens, the park spaces would need to be really high quality and actually provide something active for the community. Is that in the plans for the park spaces?
Through the chair to Councillor Wright. So I would say generally speaking at this stage in the process, the plan is fairly high level, and the purpose of identifying those parkette locations is to really signal that there is a need and a push from the city to secure some park spaces in the neighborhood. The details in terms of implementation, so what facilities might be included in those parks, those would really be determined at a future time, likely by the city as they explore acquiring those lands and figuring out what programming would be best appropriate for there.
Okay, thanks for that follow-up. And just to say that, you know, the two adjacent high schools also have considerable lands there. And we have identified Waterloo Collegiate Institute as one of those places where the neighborhood is using the grounds a lot, and so we have to also consider the pressures that will bring onto the actual school board properties. So just flagging that for planning. And then my second question has to do with, it looks like we could have residential units at grade in that neighborhood, and I'm wondering what sort of accessibility measures could be enabled because of that. The sort of mid-rise buildings, many of them would potentially have elevators and actually be quite good sites for accessible housing. And so I'm just curious what tools we have at our disposal to encourage that.
Through the chair, so yes, in the interior of the neighborhood, there's likely to be some ground floor residential units that would be required through the zoning, and one of the zoning provisions would be that the units that are on the ground floor would require to have a walkway from the door of their unit to the street or sidewalk there. There's similar examples of this that have occurred in the Northdale neighborhood. In terms of specific accessibility measures, I'm not as familiar with what those might be. We can certainly take that away and consider potential regulations to look at or provide a more detailed response. I would say that certainly the units would have to comply with building code regulations, which does include some accessibility requirements.
Okay, thank you for that. I just noted in one of our next reports, there's conversation about visit able, which is sort of the bare minimum of accessibility that could be fostered in sort of that medium rise. My last question has to do with, on page 42, it goes into the various different sustainability measures that the city wants to encourage. And the one thing that I noticed was missing is, and you know, we've been having a lot of this conversation, is extreme heat. And so I'm just asking that we factor that into the sustainability measures as we go forward. Extreme heat is one of those things that we have to get at through infrastructure. And so between the tree planting, which you know can do some of the work, we also need to work significantly on the building envelope. And if we can make sure that we're addressing that for this neighborhood, that would be really appreciated. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Councillor Wright. We have questions from Mayor McCabe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thanks for those questions, particularly about extreme heat. I was going to ask something around trees and just the need to make sure that whatever happens in this neighborhood, that there's a significant focus on replacing trees that will be lost in the process. I also, just to pick up on Councillor Wright's comments about accessibility, I don't want to speak for Councillor Wright, but what I was thinking around accessibility, and I know the concepts, the pictures that you showed are just pictures, but like, you know, the frontages and things like that. It's not just the buildings and like the buildings themselves being accessible, but the street frontage being accessible as well. Like where there's stairs depicted, you know, why not ramps and things like that, right? It's easier for people with little kids. It's easier for people with mobility devices. It's easier for rolling a bike up and down. It's easier for snow removal. It can just melt off, right? Like just thinking about the design of that area so that it really improves kind of general accessibility. The question that I had was around amenities in the area and what would be set aside or communicated around the kind of amenities that should be or that we want to see in an area. Like we know that a few months ago we changed our official plan to allow some neighborhood, I forget what the actual bylaw was, but that to allow like retail in different neighborhoods. So is that being contemplated through this process as well, so that there's a place to, you know, get some groceries or grab a coffee or, you know, go to the dentist, whatever, like actually, like, or having a grocery store? Is that part of what you're contemplating for this area as well, so that it actually becomes a really walkable, complete community?
Through the chair to the mayor, yes, absolutely, particularly along those minor corridor areas, so Columbia Street and Albert Street. The zoning will require that those ground floor units either have commercial type units in them, such as restaurants, small offices, personal service shops like hair salons, etc., in them, or they be designed to accommodate them in the future. So that's certainly something that is contemplated within the plan. It would be great to have those types of uses in this neighborhood to serve future residents. The interior of the neighborhood, so those areas where 6 stories in height are proposed, there are also some permissions for smaller scale, like convenience store type uses that would be permitted by the zoning. I would say, as just a higher level comment, the approach taken so far by the project team has not been to require these uses within buildings, but more to enable them, recognizing that it has been challenging. There's certain areas, for example, the Northdale neighborhood, where it's been challenging to fill that ground floor unit with a commercial space. So we're trying to find that balance between allowing the flexibility for a commercial space to locate there in the future, while also not having vacant space either.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that, Mayor McCabe. Any other questions from council?
Pardon me, sorry, I did have one other question, if I may, Chair.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious about the location for the consultation, and I think you said it's at the rec center, the Waterloo Region Rec Center, but is there not a location closer to the neighborhood that could be utilized that would, you know, maybe be more accessible for the people who live there, like one of the high schools or the high school, I should say, well, either of the high schools, WCI or St. David's, or some other, I don't know, or some other, a church or some other place. It just seems a bit odd that it's at the rec center.
Through the chair, you're correct. The first location we did consider was actually Albert McCormick, and then understood that the actual meeting location at Albert McCormick is not as new as what is presented and as accessible, perhaps, as the room is at the pavilion. When it comes to high schools and other locations, we didn't look there, but certainly it's something that we can look into. As we're hearing, or as I'm hearing, there is quite a bit of community interest in the first location. And so it's something I can take back to the rest of the project team and staff to see if in other instances, other locations have been used.
Okay, thank you. I think that, I mean, I don't live in that neighborhood, but I think that would be, I'm looking over to the ward councillors who both represent that area. I think that would be really important for that neighborhood to have something that's close for them. I think it would certainly probably help with the turnout. But thank you.
Councilor Freeman.
Through Chair Bodley, in the past, we've held public meetings at St. Michael's Church and at St. David's School. So I don't know whether either of those locations are available, but they have been used in the past and the turnout's been quite high. Some of the comments I had related to the relationship between this plan and the large parcel of land that is in conversation about being developed primarily around existing Waterloo Collegiate, and that whole landmass of lands that are already owned by Laurier, so the former public school that was there. And I just wondered whether or not it was of value to have a bit more commentary on the relationship between what's happening here, that major node at, is it Hazel? No, what's the main street? I always forget the name. Is it Rose Street? No, it is Hazel, like where Hazel crosses Columbia and moves into that space, because it seems to me that that's a really huge corridor, and so I wondered about that. The other thing I wondered about is what's the Indigenous consultation that's happening on this piece?
Through Councillor Freeman, through the chair, we can certainly look at providing a bigger commentary and linking the neighborhood, so to speak. We're trying to somewhat replicate the Northdale neighborhood, but at the same time treat it differently because it's not Northdale. We heard from previous engagement that this is an older neighborhood, perhaps more established. The existing tree canopy is very important, as well as provision of family size units. So, as I said, we can go back to the project team and see if we can build off some of those linkages as we go through to the final project. In terms of Indigenous engagement, we have circulated the whole entire package to the Six Nations of the Grand and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations planning groups, and we hope that they'll be providing some comments back in the time frame.
Well, a few of the comments that I've seen come through from the Indigenous consultation relates to landscape and landscape materials and that kind of thing. And so I just wondered whether we wanted to already start pointing to some of those pieces within the urban design guideline with an understanding that we could expect to see those. So, native species, designing facades that prevent bird strikes, those kinds of things, because there is a fair bit of consistency on that. And I just wondered whether we wanted to build that in advance.
Through the chair, certainly we can do that. Those are pretty common comments across the board when it comes to urban design guidelines these days, anyways, in my experience. So we'll make sure that that type of language is included.
And then I guess the other thing I wondered about was within the interior of this community, recognizing what you said, it is different than Northdale. I agree with that. I think that there's elements that don't need to be necessarily duplicated, but could be built upon in this neighborhood that may already exist south of the neighborhood. But for example, a road like High Street or Austin Drive, I wondered whether we wanted to also start thinking a little bit differently on how those streets look from a relationship with the pedestrian realm. So I'm going to use Larch Street as an example where we've done a very different road design to recognize that the primary users within that space are pedestrians, families, active transportation users. And I just wondered whether it's time to start considering design alternatives like that of roadways within neighborhoods that we know are going to be medium to low density, primarily geared for families.
Through you, Councillor Waterloo. That's an excellent question, and I think that's something we, overall, in many of the neighborhoods that we're looking at, particularly in ones that are intensifying, should be looked at. Streetscapes are evolving over time with the reduction in personal car use, more transit use, and more pedestrian connections to the broader neighborhood. So I'm with you there, and it's something we can certainly look at.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any other questions from council? Seeing none, I just want to thank council for all those really thoughtful questions there, and Brenna and Richard for answering them. Appreciate everyone's time here. I've got 2 recommendations forward, looking for a mover, moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Freeman. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. We have another really exciting and important study that's coming forward to council here. This is the Lexington Road Complete Street Study. We have a report prepared by Chris Hodgson, and we also have a presentation from Chris. Welcome, Chris. I look forward to hearing about this exciting study.
Thank you, Chair Bodley, and good afternoon, members of council. We're pleased to bring you forward staff report IPPW 25033 Lexington Road for your consideration. A feasibility study was undertaken to review and address transportation-related issues and needs along the Lexington Road corridor, and was advanced to meet the timelines of the federal government's Active Transportation Fund program. A preferred plan has been developed using Complete Streets principles, and I'd like to introduce Mr. James Schofield from our consultant WSP, who will give a short presentation on the key elements of the project, and then there's members of the project team and staff to answer any questions.
Good afternoon, members of council and the public. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on this important project. So the Lexington Road Complete Streets Study was focused on Lexington Road corridor from Davenport Road to University Avenue in the east. And there were 2 key objectives of the project, which were to review road safety and active transportation needs, and to improve the safety and user experience for people walking, cycling, and wheeling to access transit, schools, and other amenities in the area. The implementation of active transportation facilities on both sides of Lexington Road is consistent with the city's transportation master plan, which calls for either a sidewalk or a multi-use path on both sides of the road. Looking at some of the existing conditions along the corridor, the traffic data and safety, the street has a posted speed limit of 50 kilometers an hour, but we see that the operating speeds on the street range from about 54 to 63 kilometers, so some speeding, some variation depending which part of the corridor we're talking about. We also see that traffic volumes vary quite a bit throughout the corridor, with the highest volumes toward the west end by Davenport Road, tapering off quite a bit once you get east of Bridge Street. And through our review, we also identified some areas that were higher frequency of collisions, both at 3 intersections and 2 blocks, which are shown on the slide here. As I mentioned earlier, the recommendations of the TMP focus on separating cyclists from vehicular traffic for safety and for increasing the level of comfort for active transportation users on major streets, which includes Lexington Road, and the sidewalk policy, which requires sidewalks or multi-use paths on both sides of the street. Some of the constraints and challenges that we considered in our study. Driveways, there are a number of driveways along the corridor, some higher volume commercial driveways, such as the church on the south side of the corridor, and lower volume, generally single-family home residential driveways on both sides of the street. There is existing infrastructure, hydro poles on the south side, and supporting poles on the north side. On the south side of the street, there is a relatively new sidewalk that was constructed in the past few years, I believe, and quite a bit of existing trees and vegetation along Lexington Road. So these were some of the conditions that we were considering throughout our study. In the study, we considered a range of different cycling facility types, including one-way or two-way cycle tracks. So these are dedicated for cyclists only, as well as multi-use paths, which are a shared facility for cyclists and pedestrians to both use. We also looked at a number of treatments at intersections and driveways, including the idea of continuing the multi-use path through minor intersections, having vehicles ramp up and over the path as they enter the side streets, left turn lanes at key intersections, pedestrian refuge islands, again at key intersections, and pedestrian crossovers. Throughout the study, we looked at a total of 7 alternatives, considering the factors that are shown on the left side of the screen, so user experience, safety and risk, constructability, trees and vegetation. And we arrived at a preferred alternative, which was a multi-use path along the north side of Lexington Road, which provides good connectivity to the Walter Bean Grand River Trail and the future multi-use path on Davenport Road. Also provides good continuity of the existing facility on Lexington coming across Highway 85. The city, we understand, is committed to maintaining the multi-use path year-round, including snow clearing in winter, so this would not be something that residents along the corridor would be responsible for undertaking. Some key features of the preferred design. The first one is to narrow the street to support traffic calming, so taking the existing on-road bike lanes and replacing them with that multi-use path has the effect of bringing the curbs inward, reducing the overall width of the street, which we expect will have a traffic calming benefit. Maintaining most of the existing pedestrian islands, adding 2 new pedestrian crossovers, maintaining many of the existing turn lanes, adding some new left turn lanes, and additional landscaping and tree planting is contemplated along the roadway. This slide shows 3 renderings of the preferred design alternative at 3 different locations along the corridor. So the top one being west of Bridge Street. You can see that generally what is happening is the curb toward the right side of that image is being pulled inward to narrow the roadway, creating space for that multi-use path within the existing public right-of-way up in the boulevard area. And similar condition east of Bridge Street in the second figure. And again, in the third figure, east of Lexington Public School, the corridor is a bit more constrained, but we still have the multi-use path up there in the boulevard area. With that said, I'll turn it back to Chris to speak to next steps.
Thank you, James. So in terms of the next steps, we're looking to prepare the scope of work for the design based on the preferred plans. Work with our procurement team to retain the services of an engineer and design consultant, to consider other opportunities in the design, for example, some utility upgrades. Work with our regional colleagues on the design at the key intersections of Bridge Street and University Avenue. Undertake further engagement at the appropriate steps in the design process. Complete the design of the separated cycling facility by March 31st next year. And use the next budget process for opportunities for construction. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I will look to council to see if they have any questions of staff at this time. Councilor Rowe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. I just wanted to touch on concerns that council has learned of from neighbors and about, backing out of driveways, et cetera. And I'm wondering specifically if there's any other similar street upgrades in the city and that have shown that there is any increased risk in terms of pedestrian, cyclist, or motor vehicle accidents.
Thank you, Councillor, through the chair. In a sense, our collision data does not show any, impacts or major impacts relating to multi-use paths or sidewalks. People crossing through those driveways. We have 650,000+ kilometers of sidewalk, more than 47,000 kilometers of multi-use paths and other forms of active transportation infrastructure right across our city. I think we look at that and the collision assessments across the city, and I'd say we're in a fairly good place.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Freeman.
Through you, Chair Bodley, I could probably add a little insight into that one. The proposal kind of doesn't change the current condition that substantively, in the sense that there's already an on-road bike lane painted on that side of the street. So from the perspective of backing out of your driveway, you would already give consideration to a cyclist that might be in the corridor along with the vehicles. And with the revised design, you now have a little bit more of a leeway before you enter into the travel lanes of the road. The preferred design, some of the things that I liked about it is that it doesn't consume the entire right-of-way that the city owns, because we've shifted the center line of the road away from the houses. So we're kind of taking less of the frontage from the existing properties. Obviously, we could take our entire right-of-way, the entire easement, but this particular design shifts that to use less of the easement, which will result in less landscaping changes to people's front yards. It also has a reduced impact to the tree canopy, which was certainly something that was a concern the first time that we looked at just doing a standard sidewalk on that side of the road and not shifting the center line. So this design covers a lot of pieces. I can tell you that I attended the public open house, and I was there for most of it, I would say, start to almost finish. And there was a lot of really positive comments that people provided. They're very pleased about the pedestrian crossover opportunities with the signalized PXOs, because getting across that road can feel challenging because the travel speeds, as listed by the consultant, get a little bit higher. In some spaces, we're returning a dedicated left turn lane at Lee Avenue, which is something that a lot of people have asked for. There's a lot of individuals in the neighborhood who have asked for a multi-use path option. From an accessibility perspective, they're not necessarily cyclists, but they use other accessibility tools to access the corridor. And right now, there's nothing on the north side of the road that could facilitate that use. There was one very vocal voice that was contrary-minded, but generally what I was hearing was a lot of people having a willingness to engage in the conversation and consultation. I heard a lot of really positive comments too. Some people asked about roundabouts at some of those collision points at Dunvegan and Lee, and I think from a real estate perspective, we probably don't have enough real estate to realize that kind of a intersection change there. But generally, I think that it's positive. I think the comments that were received with regard to winter control is something that we want to start giving thought to, because we always seem to run into these challenges where, like, we snow load from the road into the bike space and from the bike space into people's driveways. And I think we just got to figure out a little bit better how we can manage the winter control. But at least with the multi-use path, the winter control will primarily be managed by us, which will help to keep that corridor open. And truthfully, we have no other solid east-west corridor in the city because University Avenue is just not safe to traverse. And so this is kind of our singular opportunity before you send somebody all the way to Northfield. And even at Northfield, it becomes terrible when you get to the expressway again. So this is kind of it has the potential to kind of become a little bit of a superhighway for active transportation on the east-west mode, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman. I'm just going to remind Council we've got 55 minutes till we have to take a recess, and we still have one other report and hopefully a formal to get through. I'm not trying to discourage questions, but we may have to move the formal if there are a lot of questions here. But I do want to keep the conversation going. Are there any other questions from Council at this point in time? Yep. Go ahead, Mayor McCabe.
Thanks, through you. I just wanted to, around the winter maintenance thing, just picking up again on Councillor Freeman's point, I think the snow windrow, like we will do the winter maintenance, but what I've heard, and I'm asking this because there was a delegation that wasn't able to come in and they sent us their concerns. So I just want to ensure that they're kind of on the record, but those windrows are one things that, you know, when we do the maintenance, that will show up at every private access, every driveway. So we do really need to figure that out. And that's not just for this area, like we need to, that's kind of just more broadly. And then I was just curious about the boulevards that this will create, because we know in our roads departments, we're also in our parks departments, we're trying to do a turf to trees strategy. I don't know if there's room for trees in this right of way, but trees are actually, do a lot of things, beautify, help people slow down because they see that, they provide shade, et cetera, for the people who will be using this. As Councillor Freeman said, it might become quite an east-west corridor, but something so that we don't have to continue to cut grass, basically. So just to give consideration for that if there's room in that area. But I think this is really positive. Again, considering the people in the area, the schools, getting kids to and from school and neighborhoods and friends and to parks and all that kind of stuff safely, so that they're safe, but that they actually feel safe. I think it's really important, so thanks very much. And yeah, we know this is just about the design work. We don't have money in the budget to move this forward yet, so I don't want the community to think that that construction's going to start happening in the next, even in 2026. But this is just about the design piece of it. So thanks very much. I think it's really well done.
That's great. Thank you for that, Mayor McCabe. Any other questions from Council? Seeing none, there's just one that just one thing that I did want to highlight myself as someone who has cycled down that corridor with great frequency. Currently there's a bit of a mismatch here between where multi-use paths are. There's some multi-use path on the south side of Lexington, sort of near in the Davenport area. There's a multi-use path on the north side, and one of the things that's highlighted in this report is the connectivity to the multi-use path on the north side of Lexington. And so just two things for consideration as we move forward with this is there are, if I'm cycling east from sort of King Street, Weber Street area, there's a point in time where if I knew that the multi-use path on the north side was all the way out to University, I would go and I would cross the street to it. Currently, I won't, because it would be crossing to north and then crossing back to south and then being on a painted lane. But in the future, if there was the possibility of putting a PXO sort of near Dearborn to allow where the multi-use path starts on the north side. I know that's outside of the study area here, but something for consideration to encourage folks to cross with their bikes to that side, because there's a continuous path all the way out to Uni. That would be great for consideration, and also a similar thing at Andale, because there's that short sort of short piece there of multi-use path that goes to Andale. And I know that there are ped islands there currently, which is great, but maybe something to consider, either putting a PXO or some other ability to cross on those areas to encourage people to go to the north side, where we probably want most of the cyclists to be going forward. So I'll leave that there. But if there are no other questions from council, I will move on. We have, as Mayor McCabe alluded to, we did have a delegate who was unfortunately unable to make it, and I'll point council to correspondence that was received. But we do have a delegate here, Terry and Kimberly Fisher, residents of Waterloo. Please come forward, state your name for the record and your city of residence, and you have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Hello. Mayor and councillors of Waterloo. My name is Terry Fisher. My wife Kimberly is here as well. We live at 290 Lexington Road. About 3 years ago, we also purchased the property next to us at 286 Lexington Road. And I've lived in Waterloo at that location for almost 30 years. And over those 30 years, I've noticed a lot of changes, obviously, in the section, specifically from Davenport to Bridge. There has been a significant increase in traffic, and to the point that it's very, very difficult for us residents to exit onto Lexington Road. And it's often necessary for us, as we pull out of our driveways, to not go east towards Bridge, but to go west towards Davenport and then go through the community along Dunvegan to get over to University and then onto the expressway. And if you actually drive down Lexington Road, you'll notice that a lot of the residents will actually back into their driveways when they get home in the evenings or if they're out in the evenings. So it's much easier for them to get out onto the road in the evening and the next morning. It is that difficult. Speeding has become a problem, especially at night. My office faces the front window, and I think that there are vehicles that are doing in excess of 80, 90 kilometers an hour down that speed at night. Emergency services use Lexington all the time. They are going eastbound and westbound throughout the day. We do support changes along Lexington. We think that Lexington is an obvious corridor for cyclists in the community. We do see people walking along the north side of the street. So we do think that I think I missed a slide there. Oh yes, the existing bike lanes are finally getting used. E-bikes and e-scooters are starting to account for a lot of that traffic, and they are moving at very, very high speeds. At night, many of the cyclists along Lexington don't have lights on their cycles, and they don't even have reflectors. Riding clubs, typically on the weekend, we'll see a number of riding clubs using Lexington Road because it's an obvious commuter lane because of the crossover at Highway 85. The sidewalk on the south side of the street does get regular use. I wouldn't say it's busy, but it does definitely get a lot of use through the day. And recently, though, we've noticed a number of people that do walk on the lawns on the north side of the street simply because there isn't a sidewalk there. We do support changes along that corridor. And a sidewalk in the north would actually get used. We would love to see something that slows down some of that traffic, especially at night. The 80, 90 kilometer an hour cars flying down the street aren't safe. But we feel that the solution there needs to be safe and effective for everyone. And we have some concerns about the preferred design. Emergency services do use Lexington. This picture I took outside my house last Thursday at 8 a.m. This isn't every day, but some days it's worse than this, and it really happens between about 7:45 and 8:15. In this, you can see the traffic is backed up all the way to Davenport. If there was an emergency with the preferred design, there is no place for all of this traffic on the right-hand side to get out of the way of the fire trucks. They can't use the oncoming lane because you can see that it's hard to see, but there's traffic in that oncoming lane. So we end up with a blockage of that road, and emergency services wouldn't be able to get through. We also feel that this multi-use path on the north side is going to be unsafe. It's really difficult for residents to get out onto the street, and we're going to have to back across that multi-use path in one direction or the other. Backing in is going to be very difficult because of traffic on the street, but with the design, with the grass section, it's approximately 20 feet from the edge of the curb to the north edge of the multi-use lane. That puts the driver 30 feet from the traffic, from the curb. That's a long way and a lot of time to get from there out onto the street. Otherwise, as we back out, we're going to need to be on that multi-use path, which is going to block it and not be safe either. Snowbanks are going to exacerbate these challenges, and I wouldn't feel safe trying to have my parents or elderly people along the street trying to back out onto the street under those conditions. Additionally, there are no streetlights on the north side of the street. So those pedestrians that are walking along that street at night, or the cyclists that are using that multi-use path during that don't have lights and reflectors on their bicycles, are going to be very, very difficult to see for us trying to back out of our driveways. Additionally, there isn't going to be any place for delivery vehicles. FedEx makes frequent stops, Canada Post, or all of the landscaping, lawn care vehicles that have to stop along that street. There isn't anywhere for them to go, to park, to get out of the left lane or the westbound lane of traffic. And it isn't reasonable to expect them to pull into driveways. Additionally, a lot of the lawn care companies are going to be pulling hoses across that multi-use path and creating a potential trip hazard to pedestrians and making it more difficult for e-scooters and mobility devices to get past those locations. Many of the pedestrians that are on the street, are using the sidewalks, are walking with their children or a dog, and I couldn't personally believe that a cyclist would want to be cycling down a path where there's a potential of a dog or a child running out in front of me, especially if I'm using that lane as a commuter lane. I asked a good friend of mine who is a cyclist and cycles Lexington very regularly, and he said that this is would be a big concern for him, and he would move. He would no longer use the cycle lanes. He would in fact use the roadway to cycle because he feels it would be much safer. And that concern isn't just him. I did a quick Google search, Lexington Road bicycle lane, and I found a couple of threads on Reddit and Facebook. It is, I've quoted a few of the comments there. The first one talks that the multi-use path is going to make it less safe, especially at intersections. The second one is talking about the crossings of the driveways. He regularly rides on Lexington, and he said he'd probably not that he would probably ride on the road now. And the third one was at the information center and was told that this project isn't so much for the people who are commuters, but more for family and kids. So I don't want to see those potential commuters being excluded. These, I'm sure, concerns are very common. I know Joseph Street in Kitchener switched to a one-way street. They put separate bicycle lanes on the street, and they did that on the opposite side to the residential driveways. And I've been told that Caroline Street from John Street to Herb, the development at 144 Park, was originally going to do a multi-use path. And after consultation with the cycling community, they found out that that area was, again, a commuter section of cycling path. And they've changed that now that they had separate cycling lanes from the recreational lanes on Caroline Street and through that development. And that actually carries all the way down Caroline Street now. I have things that I think would work a little bit better. The first solution would simply be to move that multi-use path onto the south side of the street. The driveways on the south side of the street are not heavily used. There's two gravel lots, the church and the Highgate Retirement Residence.
Terry, I just want to highlight that you've got 1 minute left. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So I have this alternative. The other alternative would be something similar to Highland Road, where they put multi-use path on both sides, but bike lanes one way and one the other. I think there's a number of benefits to this one. I actually like this one better than the bike lanes or the multi-use on the other side of the street. Summary, we want to see improvements on Lexington, but I don't think the preferred design is going to serve everyone. I think there's got to be a better solution, and I urge council to investigate those better solutions in consultation with key stakeholders, and I suggest a revised resolution to allow for major changes to preferred design through that detailed design phase in consultation with the community.
Thank you so much, Terry, and thank you, Kimberly, for coming as well, and for the delegation here. Does anyone have any questions for the delegate? Go ahead, Councilor Freeman.
Yeah, I'll just say thank you for coming. I'm gonna have to look to staff to say, how do we incorporate the information? Like, I know that we looked at this as a preferred design, and that the challenges were so significant because of the utilities, the retaining walls needed on the south side, later down on Lexington. I don't know whether we can elaborate on that. I don't know I kind of don't know how to use the information that the delegate has shared with us. And thank you for coming. I wanted to thank you for coming today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
That's great, thanks. Any other questions for the delegate? Seeing none, thank you again very much, Terry. Appreciate your time this afternoon. And so we have heard from staff. We have no other delegates, and so, pardon me?
But is staff going to respond?
I just had a question for staff.
Yeah, so I'm looking to see if we've got questions again for staff and for comments, I guess, from Councilor Freeman's questions to the delegate.
Through you, Chair Bartley, to Councillor Freeman. Yeah, this is a feasibility study, so it's quite conceptual, as you saw from the consultant's renderings. We're allowance and latitude in that right of way to be able to shift things and not tie ourselves down now. Our key stakeholders, such as the emergency services, we've already engaged them through the feasibility, and we would do so again through the design. In terms of lighting, that's one of our those other opportunities we're looking to address. That's already kind of been noted. You already commented on backing in and out of driveways over facilities. The separated cycling, as we know, it's the go-to. It's a directive of the master plan. It's for safety. It's for all ages and abilities. And multi-use paths do accommodate commuters as well as for recreation purposes as well. And one of the reasons why we'd like to try and get a wider MUP there if we can, and that allows more space for the various users that we anticipate will use in that. So did I touch on everything that you...
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Freeman, if you've got any follow-ups.
Well, I guess the question is like, recommendation 2 says that we approve the preferred plan. And I'm just thinking that we received a lot of comments, good comments from the delegate. So is it possible that we don't include recommendation 2 per se, but that we say that you progress a detailed design, but that you give consideration to additional comments? Because in particular, some of the comments related to emergency services and where cars can go, that was a very real picture. That happens every day, literally every day of the week. I just, like, is that possible? Can we do that where we approve recommendation 1 and 3 so that you can give additional consideration to other comments? Because the delegate also has asked that we go back out to the community to address some of the pieces that were raised. And truthfully, I recall people marking up sheets with comments, but I didn't see them as succinctly prepared as they were today, and I appreciate that. So my recommendation would be that I'm happy to move items 1 and 3, and then, and as an alternate, what do you want me to say, Madam Clerk?
I would just suggest, through the chair to Councillor Freeman, that you are moving an alternate recommendation from what staff had proposed. And so recommendation 2 just becomes that staff continue with was it progressive detailed design? Yeah, I think it's just that staff consider the community feedback provided. Yeah, just if you add that to number 2. Progress the plan to detailed design phase to meet the timelines of the Federal Active Transportation Fund program, giving consideration to to the community feedback.
Yep, great. While clerks are wordsmithing that, I'll look to see if anyone has any other questions before we get that on the floor. Do you have any other questions, Councillor Freeman?
Just to change the word to giving, not given, but giving consideration to the community feedback.
Lovely. Any other questions? Oh, I see Commissioner Ormson has his hand up.
Thanks, Chair Bodley, and thanks to Council for the questions about this important report. If it were acceptable to Councillor Freeman, my preference would be if we could leave the recommendations as is and simply take that as direction to staff, because as Mr. Hodgins mentioned, this is a concept design, it's not the detailed design, and we are still open to looking at how we can tweak the design to have the line of best fit to address everybody's concerns. But the concept itself, I think, is fairly refined to this stage of the game, so I think it would add a lot of confusion if we don't get some direction and support from council on what's been proposed today. And again, we can take direction, staff can take those directions to look at further exploration of some of the concerns that have been raised through the process.
Okay, I'm gonna let council ruminate on that because we still have some questions here. But thank you for that, Commissioner Ormson. Councillor Rowe, you had a question?
No, I'm going to.
Okay. Mayor McCabe?
Thank you, and thanks, Commissioner Ormson. I guess I would be concerned by keeping the word preferred plan in there, the language preferred plan in there. Like, could it be, if we needed to keep that in there, could it be, I guess it would be a friendly amendment to you, Councillor Freeman, to say the conceptual plan, because that's what you've been referring to it as, is a conceptual plan. And I think be approved would need to be amended as well, that the conceptual plan contained in the report continue, I'm just thinking of the conceptual plan, because we can't approve it at this point, right, without giving consideration to the community feedback that we just had. Does it, like, I don't feel comfortable with the word be approved.
Yeah, I would just say accepted. And like we can just accept what we've received today. And that we authorize you to keep doing your work, but that there's clearly some more questions that need to be answered. That would be my suggestion, and I'd be happy to move that.
Okay, so I'm gonna look to staff to see if that's something that they would be amenable to, if that allows them everything that they need to move forward with this project. Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, Councillor Bodley, through you to Council. I think we need to give regards to the fact that this project's grant of $50,000 towards the design is potentially compromised if we delay the project and don't take forward a preferred concept or a preferred design. So I think maybe Mr. Hodgson can elaborate on some of the timelines there too as well.
Yes, to you, Councillor Bodley. The timelines are very strict with this grant. So we've progressed the feasibility study to get a preferred design of the street, but also a preferred cycling facility. And that's the component that we need to advance to detailed design in order to literally hand over to the grant fund by March 31st in terms of shovel ready. So the whole preferred plan relies on the element of space, how we're changing the cross section in order to do that. If we're going back to earlier design considerations that we've already looked at and discounted, or at least through the evaluation, with my experience, we're not going to meet that deadline. So I'd just like to advise council of that.
Thank you for that, Chris. And if I may, just from the chair here, I think as staff had highlighted, there were 7 things that were evaluated here, 7 options that were evaluated, and no plan is going to address all of the concerns that every individual is going to bring forward to us here at council. And so, from my perspective, I think that the preferred plan that staff have highlighted makes a lot of sense. I do certainly agree with the delegate on certain elements of that plan having some challenges, and as Commissioner Ormson had said, I think providing direction to staff to work towards mitigating those challenges as we move forward would be, from my perspective, the most appropriate way, and I would be comfortable with approving it. But that's just me from the chair. Council has the ability to put something on the floor and debate and discuss it. But before we do that, we would like to hear from Councillor Rassick.
Thanks through you, Chair Bodley. I guess what I'm curious about is these are all important considerations that you're presenting before council, and I'm wondering if staff might be able to meet with you if we can approve the original recommendations, which I'm in support of, and have staff meet with you to discuss, I'm asking if this is possible, to discuss some of the challenges. There has been quite a lot of community feedback, so I'm concerned about putting into a motion saying giving consideration to community feedback, given there has been, and that implies that you have not done extensive community consultation on this. So when there has been extensive community consultation, including with the ward councillors, myself and Councillor Freeman, we've been kept abreast of all of the project since it started. And so what I know through that process is that many of the concerns that you're raising have sort of answers to them. Like Councillor Bodley said, they're not perfect answers because you can't get everything in a project, but I suspect that meeting with city staff and going through some of your concerns and the other preferred or the other options that weren't chosen might help to alleviate some of your concerns, and that would help to provide additional impact into whatever detailed design still happens. So your feedback would still be incorporated. So I feel comfortable continuing the course, and I also really appreciate your feedback, and I'm wondering if that would be possible for staff to meet rather than, yeah.
Okay, so council has a decision to make, and I know that this is a boundary road between 2 dueling ward councillors here, so maybe I will look back to Councillor Freeman, who originally had a proposal, and see if she would like to put something officially on the table, and then we'll vote on it and or debate on it.
I don't think we duel, but we could. I'd like to think that what we've put here advances it. I'm not trying to slow it down at all. I'm basically saying that we are accepting the conceptual plan you provided, and we're giving you authorization to progress a plan to detailed design. And it says progress the plan for detailed design. So I think it still achieves all that you've done, and we've received some additional written feedback today, and I feel like asking you to give consideration to that additional written feedback and helping council to understand how you've incorporated that into the detailed design will help us to have answers to some of these questions. So I'm not trying to slow down your work. I'm not trying to put a barrier into achieving the timelines. I think this does what we're asking you to do. I'm not asking you to go back to the drawing board. I'm just asking to get answers in this detailed design about how you answered these questions. And it may be, for example, that the boulevard is too wide, or that we have to find room for cars to stage to allow an emergency vehicle to pass by. Or maybe if all the cars go to the side, there is room. I don't know. But you probably know, and you can tell me the answer. So I think this still achieves what it needs to achieve, and I'd like to. I'm comfortable with the motion.
Okay, so Councillor Freeman is putting the motion as it is listed on the screen here forward. Does Councillor Freeman have a seconder for that? Councillor Wright is seconding that motion. Perfect. So this is on the floor now for further discussion, and Councillor Rowe has a question.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just wanted to confirm with Chris, does the rewritten number 2 then still allow you to move forward with the grant that you're needing to meet the deadline?
Through you, Chair Bodley, to Councillor Rowe. I think what's being tabled now is the existing version of number 2 on the recommendations, if I understand correctly.
There are mild adjustments to this. Instead of preferred, it is now conceptual, and instead of approved, it is now accepted. And so I will look to staff to see if that wordsmithing allows them to move forward with the grant as per Councillor Rowe's question.
We believe so.
Okay, so staff have answered in the affirmative there that they're okay with this. And it is on the floor and has been seconded. And so I'm going to look to see if there is any other debate or questions. Go ahead, Councillor Razik.
I don't know, man. Like, or through you, Chair Bodily, I mean. This is fine, but we have the answers to this, all these questions. This is the preferred plan for a reason. I don't want a duel at all. I just don't want. I just don't want to be. I just don't understand the point of it, really, to be quite honest. Other than we've had a delegate who's presented really good feedback that we're going to connect them with staff about. So anyways, I don't want to belabor my point, which is that if everyone votes for this, I can vote for this. It sounds like it's the same, but I'm not getting the actual sense that it is the same. So we know what the preferred plan is. We know why there's a preferred plan. We have all the reasons why there's a preferred plan because we've met with staff and the consultant about it, and we have community feedback. And I do have reservations about putting into a motion, giving consideration to the community feedback, unless we want to narrow it in on that was given in a delegation on September 8th, 2025, because it implies that staff don't give consideration to feedback. And I know it's a small nuance, but this has had extensive consultation. So, like, I really appreciate where you're coming from here, and I get it, and because I do also really value the constituents' feedback. And at the same time, I really don't think it's necessary, so I just don't want to vote for this slight change. Because if it's the same, then let's just keep it the same. But that's just my perspective.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Razik, and I'm going to take a moment to just apologize for saying the word duel. I was a little too colloquial there. That was not my intent in any way whatsoever, and I will leave it at that. Okay, any other comments? No other. There is one other comment from Councillor Rowe.
Sorry, I just am looking for clarification. So between the current language of number 2 and then the original language, would you still have the opportunity to look at, because this is high level-ish, to look at emergency services as Councillor Freeman was saying, like to make any of those adjustments with the original wording?
Through you, Chair Bodley, to Councillor Rowe. Yes, absolutely, with all the emergency services and all, even with their own transportation for the plough, the preferred plan has a narrowed cross-section. Without that, we don't get the speed control. So the narrowing has to take place. How that forms either side, we can work through detailed design. We'll work with emergency services, with all the other stakeholders. But again, that this concept is still going to require a narrowed road cross-section, regardless of whether it's a multi-use path or if we're directed to do something else. That space is required in order to make the active transportation elements work. And I say we've gone through all these different versions to land on this one, but either way, the road narrowing is required for all of those scenarios. But we're happy to work with emergency services on their concerns, as we would with any project.
Okay. I think we've exhausted the conversation here. We have it moved and we have it seconded. And so I'm just going to call the vote at this time. All those in favor? That is 6 of us. And all those opposed? That is 2 of us. That has carried. And regardless, we look forward to seeing this come forward. And we look forward to this excellent active transportation corridor being activated in the near future. Okay, moving along, we have the multi-unit residential acquisition pilot program. We have a report prepared by Adam Zifferly and Douglas Stewart, and they also have a presentation for us. Welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Bodley. In the interest of time, we will have a brief presentation for you. Multi-unit residential acquisition program is one of the Housing Accelerator Fund initiatives. We have a total grant funding of $2.625 million to protect and preserve rental housing within the city of Waterloo and to assist nonprofits with the purchase of existing rental housing in the city of Waterloo. Our multi-unit residential program, as proposed, also includes the potential to add affordable housing units to sites with existing rental housing. The program is structured through a call for applications. Staff will review all of the responses to the call for applications through the MURA selection committee, which is made up of city staff, and then grant funding will be awarded to successful proponents. We are planning to award grant funding to at least 2 successful proponents with the available funding from the Housing Accelerator Fund. To be eligible for the MURA program, the applicant must have a not-for-profit status and must be proposing to purchase a building that contains market-based residential units with at least 6 units, and staff will consider applications to purchase housing with a range of typologies, as you can see in the presentation. In the review of applications, priority will be given to applications which plan to protect housing for priority groups, including READY groups in our READY program and housing that is currently visitable. And we will also prioritize applications which propose to protect existing housing units that are at affordable prices or naturally occurring affordable housing, as well as applications which propose to expand the total amount of affordable housing on the site. We will also prioritize applications which propose the protection of existing tenants throughout the acquisition of the property. And then finally, the program will include a grant contribution agreements during which the applicant and the city will agree to all of the terms in the policy that's included with the staff report. And finally, we have, this is our implementation timeline, so over the course of the next 9 months or so, we will finalize the MURA program. In January, we will issue advance notice for the call for applications, which will be the signal to the nonprofit housing providers in the region to go out and search for an eligible property. At this time, we will also provide council with a briefing note on the update. We will also update council through a briefing note as to the status of the MURA program. And then finally, in May 2026, we will bring a report to council once the grant funding has been awarded. That concludes this presentation. Douglas and I are available to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you for the very succinct and informative presentation there. Lots of information in the report, something that I think council is very keen on seeing advanced. But let me look to council to see if there are any questions of staff on this program. Councillor Hammer.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. I'm really pleased to see this come forward. Perhaps I'm a little tainted in where my question is going to come from because I have an affordable housing project in my ward that still has not broken ground. So one of the things as I was reading through this, it kept screaming back into my mind is how are we going to make sure that if we do make an award for someone who's eligible within this program, that we're actually going to see it come to fruition in a short period of time. And you may want to say that's something we'll consider, and I'll look forward to seeing it back in the report in March. But it's certainly been a real difficulty in my ward for a project that hasn't started yet.
If I may reply through the chair. One of the things in housing we cannot do, we're not the people that do the physical construction. And that's part of the issue that you have identified. From our perspective, this program has an expiry. This is December of 2027. The funding has to have been allocated. It's our expectation. We've consulted with the industry. They are extremely interested. Our program is structured that this helps them purchase, and that's all the program can do at this time. I would suggest that staff, with all affordable housing programs, will bring out our pom-poms and try to get this to be advancing.
Thank you for that, Stuart. I think I may follow up with you offline and share a little bit more detail about this project that I'm referring to. It's not as clear-cut as one might think, but thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Hammer. Mayor McCabe.
Thank you, and thanks for bringing this forward. I'm really excited about this and grateful that the region took the first step to put this in place so that we can hopefully agree to enact this program. I'm just curious about there's a few things in the housing market that are happening. Like we have our $1 million affordable housing grant. I know some of that's already been allocated. There's the federal government are going to be at some point launching their Build Canada Homes. There's a co-op, our local co-ops are doing a feasibility study right now. So I'm just wondering if if you're anticipating that this will align with those various programs or how it kind of all fits together.
If I may reply through the chair. This is a standalone program, but there's other programs that support it. And again, our intent, we've had extensive consultation with some of the not-for-profits, and the feedback has been positive. We're intending, should council support this, that we will organize a meeting with the groups as we prepare all the documentation that will help encourage them to be fully prepared and fully aware. What I have been finding is those not-for-profit groups certainly see the value of what's being offered here, and they're fully aware of all the other programs. And we are hoping that they will take this up as well as the other things. You know, if there's one thing about this is it's not just one program. There's so many out there, and I think the groups out there they all understand that, and they're taking advantage.
That's really good to hear, because there is a lot that our municipality are doing, that the region's doing, and as I said, I'm really happy to see this move ahead. And I read the housing needs assessment that you provided. Really interesting information in there, and one of the stats that really jumped out at me is that 16% of households are one-parent families. The majority of these are women with low or very low household income. So, I mean, I think that's a pretty stark statistic of our community, of what's happening in our community. There's a lot of other information, and that's just one stat out of that 166-page report that you kindly provided us, Douglas. But you know, and I think really taking steps like this MIRA program, and also the big project at 2025 that the city is doing. I mean, this is why we're doing this, right? Because we need to address some of the most vulnerable people in our community and find them housing. So thanks for bringing this forward and working on it. I'm hoping that other municipalities in Waterloo region and across the province, but certainly in Waterloo region, will take up this opportunity as well. And I'd like to move it.
If I may add one thing, and I think it's an important aspect. We, as the city, this will be the only, this is the second program like this in Ontario. There's one other one that may occur, but it has issues of funding, so it may not advance. So as I think council should, when you did reference our housing needs assessment, yes, 166 pages, where most of them don't reflect that. But what I think it does say is this council has taken advantage of a variety of things to provide for affordable housing, and this is one more. And I think it's an important part that in Ontario, we are number 2. Number 1 is Toronto. So I guess if they can't win the Stanley at least they delivered a housing program. I'm a Montreal fan, so I do apologize for that comment.
Talk about dueling. Now we're going to duel.
Okay. Now,
Anyway, thank you, Doug. I'm prepared to move.
yeah, now we're getting silly, Douglas. You're not welcome back here anymore. But we may have another question for you. It might be the last one you answer here. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Before we move forward with the mayor moving this, I just want one point of clarification. The report includes lodging houses as one of the potential building forms that would be included in this. Our lodging houses are 5+ units, and this requires a minimum of 6. So does that mean that we would then be losing a subsection of eligibility in our lodging house stock?
Reply through the chair. Yes, the number is 6 or more.
Okay, so I'd just be interested in knowing at some point. I'll take this offline and connect with our rental housing. I just would like to know how many then become ineligible because of that. That's all. I'll do that offline. Thanks.
Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you so much for the report. I'm super excited about this report. Certainly, as we saw earlier with the Housing Accelerator Fund Sugarbush, there are pockets in Ward 6 of affordable housing, and I'm really hoping that some of those get become part of this program. My question, though, I'm going to build on Councillor Hanmer's question, just in terms about moving forward, but also like reassurances. So what I'm wondering is, are there any safeguards in place if a nonprofit partner defaults or wants to sell in the future? Not to be a downer, but I'm just wondering.
If I may reply back through the chair. The intent of the program is to give the funding out to groups to proceed, and we're hoping they will proceed. There will be a document they have to enter into, which will spell out what they're obliged to do, what they have to do. And if they don't do that, the funding will be canceled. So there will be protection against that aspect. The issue of timing, we will have to build it in, that there is a restriction on when they can proceed. As best as we can. I defer.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I'd note that this is for the acquisition of existing buildings. So that's a little bit different from the project that you're referring to, Councillor Hanmer, where there's a new build. So where there might be a new build, in this case, for the most part, we'd be dealing with existing buildings. And so there's not as much necessarily risk. There might be risk in terms of defaulting, on the property, but as Douglas was identifying, we would look to secure the grant amount on title, and so I think there's good safeguards worked in there.
Thank you so much. Not that I expect that to happen, but in real estate, anything can happen. So that's good to know. Thank you.
Councillor Hammer, sorry.
Through you, Chair. I'm just nodding. Adam, thank you for jumping in. My point wasn't so much that it was new build and property. It was more consequences if things aren't met. So it's learning from projects that have happened in the past, regardless of the full content. So I'm pleased to hear that we're considering what we're able to put in as consequences so that we can, and not that I want things to fall through, but we want to make sure that whatever we're starting, we're going to be able to continue. I think this is a great program, and I have been involved with it in other jurisdictions, so I'm glad to see it's coming here.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hanmer. And yeah, very excited. I think everyone at council, we may have some stuff that we want to chat about offline and that staff are going to be working on to execute this program, but I think it's really exciting that we're going to be the first mid-sized city in Ontario to have a program such as this in place. And we'll thank the federal government for the Housing Accelerator funding money as well too. This has been moved by Mayor McCabe. I do need a seconder, and the seconder is going to be Councillor Hanmer. And all those in favor? That is unanimous. And we are at, we have told staff already that we are going to defer this until the evening. And so I'm going to apologize to staff and also to the delegate for the formal public meeting that is forward. We will start with the formal public meeting immediately at 6:30 when we return. Unless clerks tell me something different.
The concern is that you have a presentation from both staff and both the delegate, and then likely questions from council or comments. So I'm not certain if council feels as though this is something they could accomplish in 15 minutes total, then it would be possible, but otherwise we do have to take a break so that people are able to eat dinner before an evening that has plenty of delegations as well.
So we are adjourned until, recessed, excuse me, until 6:30.
Can I just make a motion to that we continue until 5:30 to just get through this part?
I don't know if you can make that motion or if there will be support for that motion, but I will look to clerks.
If there's no support for the motion, there's no support for the motion. But I would like to suggest
clerks, is that a motion that we are allowed to put forward?
That we continue until 5:30.
Mayor has put forward a motion for us to continue till 5:30. Is there a seconder for that? Councilor Rowe is seconding that. All those in favor of that? That is 4-4, so it, or sorry, all those opposed? Yeah, that's 4, so that fails, and we are recessed until 6:30. Thank you.